Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, KB reps NJ. With the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will sign. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to yapping.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Till Mets Do Us Part, where we are live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week. And of course, if you miss a moment of this show, it is available free everywhere you get your podcast. That includes this YouTube channel at Till Mets Do Us Part, and Spotify and Apple and all of those places and more. John Saponaro coming to you from Burbank, California, where it's rainy. Kind of rainy, not raining anymore, kind of sunny. I'm not really sure what the weather is doing, so I am dressed like I brew beers in Portland, Oregon, because I cannot handle what is going on with the schizophrenic weather out here in Southern California. I had to take that one away from my co-host before he came in and dissed me for the way that I was dressed. Speaking of my co-host, Matt Ibanez, holding things down back in New Jersey. Ibby, how you feeling, man?
I'm doing pretty good, John. Thank you for asking, as always. And I guess the Jersey schizophrenic weather has made its way out to the West Coast because things have been a lot nicer over here lately. The last couple of days, it's felt like summer, at least, with pushing 70 degrees, and we're outside. And the kids are playing outside. We're grilling a little bit. So the last couple of days have been nice. So I would say I'm sorry, but you always rag on me for my weather. So enjoy the weather that you're having right now. But other than that, I'm having a good time. Our Mets are, chugging along when it comes to this spring. We'll talk about all the happenings that have gone on the last week, which, again, we're trying our best to, make it out of Port St. Lucie in one piece to get our way back up north to the frigid coldness that will be the start of the season. But, not such great news for our New York Mets. And that's obviously our lead for today. And we'll get into all of it. But as Brad already said in the comments, the red light's on. It's Wednesday. It's time to talk some Mets. Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. We'll jump right into it. First of all, shout out to everybody who is here when we kick off the show. Just short of 100 folks immediately joining us for the live stream. We've got Darren Rivera. We have Stanley Babbage. We have Cindy. We have Charlie in the house. The aforementioned Brad is here. Try to see who else we got. Carlos Ramos hanging out with us, as he has basically every single week over the last month or so. We got Jeff Cohen with us. A lot of folks, a lot of familiar faces, and that's usually how it goes when things start off. Zero Cool, Odd Villain in the house. Subway to Shay. Shout out to Aunt Rivera. Top Bunk Sports. Shout out to them as well. Armand is here. Who else? We got Keith Blacknick, the Media Goon. And I think that is everybody in the comments to this point. But I want to pull up a couple comments straight out of the gate because people do not fail. Oh, David Burnett saying hi from Port St. Lucie. That's right. Said that he was going down to Port St. Lucie. So there you go. Hope you have fun.
Keep him healthy, there. David. Keep him healthy. Come on,
yeah,
man. Come on.
It is always great to go down to spring training. Brad saying, if you listen on playback, you miss the fun. And I do agree. Look, it's still fun, but it's not quite the same because you can't get in comments like this when you listen on playback. Keith Blacknick saying, brew beers in Portland or moved back to Williamsburg when talking about my look. Odd Villain saying, you look like you wear Carhartt, but work remote. Which is... honestly, both of those are
Odd's already coming in with a fantastic comment. The show just started. It's gonna be a good one.
It is going good one. And before we go any further into the conversation, I do want to bring this one up from Keith Blacknick, the media goon himself, one of the people at the brain trust of the Queens Baseball Convention, which you and I have been a part of for several years now. I've got the art on my wall behind me. March 23rd, 2025, Doc Gooden, the one and only Doc Gooden, panel and signing at Catch in Astoria, which is where the Queens Baseball Convention was born, I believe. I believe the first ever event was right there in Catch in Astoria, and it will be hosted by the one and only Aunt Rivera from Subway to Shea. So if you're trying to get a Doc Gooden autograph, if you're trying to meet Doc Gooden, if you're trying to hear from Doc Gooden, and if you need to scratch that baseball itch right before the season starts, it is a great event. And Ibby, I have hosted a one-off QBC event for Keith Hernandez. You have hosted a one-off QBC event with Howie Rose. And so now shout out to Aunt Rivera who gets that honor, but it's smaller in scale than the QBC, but it doesn't make it any less fun. It doesn't make it any less interesting.
No, absolutely. It's a very intimate setting, and whatever it may be, whether it's an interview or a Q&A or just the fact that you get to be, up close and personal with someone that's related to the Mets, in large stature, like a Doc. So it's probably going to be a fantastic time, and I know that Ant's going to kill it as he always does. And if you want to get out there, like John said, scratch that itch, get out there. Catch is great. Food's fantastic. The setup is really cool as well. So if you're a Mets fan, you want to get out there, hang out with Ant for a little bit, hang out with Doc, head on over, get some tickets. They're still available, and it's going to be a good time.
Yeah, Catch is great. And thank you, Keith. I you know what? I knew this. Said, nope, the first QBC was at McFadden's. You know what? I knew that. And I think I just had Catch on the brain because so many of the other ones have taken place there. And Catch still does the food fired. And everything. I'm fired. I'm done. I tried to get Catch shot out, and here we are. Anyway, Ibby, there's a lot to talk about with regards to our New York Mets. And I think that we should start with the biggest thing. It's number one on the scroll, just came across the bottom of the ticker. Francisco Alvarez, he of the revamped swing, he of the former top prospect in baseball, Mets top catching prospect, a guy who has had some ups, some downs to start his big league career, but certainly a guy who is firmly in the future plans of our New York Mets. And I think the future starts now. He's a part of it right now. He is such an integral part of what this team is looking to do, not only this year, but moving forward. And now we're going to have to wait 6 to 8 weeks, basically 2 months before we get to see Francisco Alvarez again. He has a fractured hamate bone, which is that wrist bone in your hand. Look, the positive is it's a common injury for baseball players, and it seems like a pretty straightforward surgery. I think they usually just take the bone out and then you just, recover from having the surgery. So I don't think this is a situation where you're going to see a prolonged absence. But one of the things that you do see sometimes is that hitters don't come back right away living up to their full potential, especially their power potential when they have a hamate bone taken out. So it is a blow for, Alvarez in his young career, and it's certainly a blow for the Mets offense right now. So, the hits keep on coming with regards to the injury bug.
Obviously, the injury bug that's killing the Mets right now when it comes to pitching now moves over to Alvarez. It sucks. And what really sucks the most for Alvarez is we were expecting him to take a step this year. He had a really strong September. He ended the season really hot. And you saw some of that power start to come back. He had the revamped swing. And you're hoping, okay, now he can take another step and move forward his progression in overall growth as a hitter. And now you're doing something where he's going to be out. It's at the hand again. This is the second time he's getting something done with his hands. First it's the thumb. Now it's this. And like you said, which you put perfectly, when a player has the hamate bone taken out, yes, it's straightforward, but the power is sapped for a lot of guys. And it's something that takes a while to come back. And look, I'm not saying he had to come here and be, a 25 home run hitter this year, but that's kind of the potential that we've been looking for. And we wanted him to see and take those steps to being a better power hitter. And now you're saying that, yes, while him coming in, let's say, if we're being kind, at some point during the month of May, if that's the case, that's all right. But maybe he's not going to truly be who he can possibly be until the second half of the year. And again, what happens in that case? Does he start to press a little bit more? Does he revert back to some old tendencies? What happens? Like, how's this going to affect the new swing? There's a lot of question marks that can come into play with this. And overall, I want to know how this happens on the backfields. Like, I want to know, like, when I saw it, I thought, oh my God, did he get hit? Did something happen? He hit on the hand? No, it happens during swings. Like,
Yeah.
it's wild to see something like that, especially it's probably wild to me mainly because of all the injuries that are hitting this team, or I should say hitting New York in general, because the Yanks, I know this isn't a Yanks show, but they're getting crushed with injuries as well. It just sucks all around for New York baseball with the injuries that are happening, because they're happening to some really damn good ball players that are going to affect the team one way or another. Do I think this is going to crush the Mets? No, I don't. Does it suck for Alvarez and his progressions as a player? It does.
Yeah, it does. And look, it's funny that you brought that up, because when the news came down, I had been playing softball that morning, and obviously the morning for me, 3 hours behind where you guys are at on the East Coast. And I remember just firing off that question to our Mets content creators group chat that we have on Twitter, which is you and me, and shout out to the folks from Mets Weekly and Shea and Sons. We already mentioned Aunt Rivera, and I was just like, wait, did Alvarez get plunked? Like, what happened? And and it's unfortunate that this happens at all. It's unfortunate it happens in spring training. It's unfortunate it happens on the backfields in the most meaningless of meaningless situations, right? But I think there is a little bit of solace to be taken here, Ibby, with regards to what you just mentioned. If it's going to happen at all, you'd rather it happen now. You'd rather him miss some time early. You'd rather him have his power sapped early. And maybe in the second half of the season, it all kind of comes together for him and allows him to just be the guy that he was meant to be. And they don't take this tremendous hit. The one thing, though, just to counterbalance that, is this issue with the new swing. We all know how strong Alvarez is. And part of the reason for this new swing is that he doesn't have to sell out for power. He doesn't have to have this high leg kick, because he has a tremendous amount of pop in his bat. And the thought process with some of the changes that he made to his swing was that he would be able to wait a bit longer, and he would be able to recognize breaking pitches, and he'd be able to drive pitches on the outside part of the plate. Wouldn't get him out in front as much as he was, flailing as much as he has in the past. But now, Ibby, when some of your power gets zapped, does he revert to an old swing after the fact? That would be my only concern, apart from the fact that, look, I want to watch Alvarez. I like Luis Torrens. I think he's an exciting player because he's a good defensive catcher, very good. He's got a great arm, throws guys out. He's going to hit a little bit for you. He's going to, show you some streaky pop and, drive in some runs and, bang some doubles off the wall and things like that. But he is a backup player. So obviously I'd rather watch Francisco Alvarez
Wait a minute. Am I the one frozen? Oh my God. I'm sorry, guys. I'm laughing over here because I thought that I was the one that froze. And apparently it wasn't me. It was John that got frozen. Holy shit. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm sitting here thinking that I was the one waiting for my Wi-Fi to get back on. But apparently it's John over there who now drops out. So we'll fix this. John will make his way back into it. Carlos going to say that. Now I'm starting to cut out. Oh my God, this is a nightmare. Wait a minute. The man is back.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened there, man. Yeah,
it was hysterical because I'm sitting here literally like this, waiting for my Wi-Fi to come back because I assumed it was me. So I'm sitting here and it's quiet. And I thought that I'm like staring at everyone. Then everyone starts talking in the chat like, "No, it's John." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sitting here like an idiot, not saying anything, waiting for mine to come back on."
Yeah, that was crazy. Now yours is glitching out. I apologize to everybody. My Wi-Fi literally just shut off. I looked up at my computer screen and the Wi-Fi icon was gone. And then StreamYard was like, "Hey, something went wrong." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, obviously something went wrong." John with the Wi-Fi issues. John on Ibby's Wi-Fi. Oh shit, John got Ibby'd. John has Ibby's internet. You guys know where we're going. I don't know where I got cut off, Ibby, but basically the bottom line is that I just don't know if Alvarez makes a switch back to the old swing to try to recapture some of the power that he perceived he needs to get if he doesn't get the power dividends when he comes back. I don't know if I got to that point, but that's where I was going.
Can you hear me still? I know mine's a little bit.
No, you're good
right now. Okay. No, that's the main point that I was trying to make too. It's like when these things happen to somebody, you're afraid that you're going to revert back to, old habits or just trying to sell out for something because you are lacking in said area. So you're like, maybe I got to get a little bit more giddy up in my overall swing to try and, muster the ball the way I want to. And that's what, like, if you're working on something, you got to stay true to it. And now I'm curious to see, I'm sure he's a disciplined player. He's going to, try to stick to what he's trying to learn and execute it. But again, when these things happen, sometimes the body takes over and you think that, I have to compensate in certain areas because I want to be able to do what I'm used to doing. So it's going to be interesting to watch. Like you said, I'm fine with Luis Torrens. I know it's been a big topic of conversation for a lot of people in terms of, do you go, in-house for a backup? Do you stay in-house for a backup, I should say? Do you go out and try to get someone to come in? The biggest thing I will say is this. Torrens knows the staff. It sucks because of the relationships that Alvarez has with certain players, especially someone like Diaz, when he's not going to be here. That sucks. But I'm confident with Torrens handling the staff, what he can provide for the offense, batting, let's say, eighth. It's whatever. Just go out there, do what you can. Manage the staff, that's the most important thing here. But I'm assuming that they're probably going to be staying in-house. So I listened to David Stearns as opposed to when Mendoza said that they might go out. I think they stay in. I think they have options. I think they're fine in that sense because I don't think there's much of a point right now to bring someone like a Yasmani Grandal in here, give him money to be the backup. It's like plus I did say in Ant Rivera's chat last night, shout out to Ant Subba to Shea. He had Kelly Franco on, and they were talking about this. And I had mentioned that I think it'd be hysterical if Stanger is the one that gets the backup job, and then you have Senga throwing to Sanger. And I said it'd be hysterical if somebody from Long Island was trying to say that out loud. It'd be hysterical. But I think that's where they're going to go. I think they're going to stay in-house.
I do. I think this is a good one from Zero Cool saying Alvarez's main value is behind the plate. His framing is top tier. It is. So is his pop time. It is. Most of the staff ERA is lower when he catches than when others catch. So his bat right now is secondary. I do agree with that. However, the positive, I guess, if you could take away from that, is that Luis Torrens' biggest positives is that he is a very good defensive catcher. So do I think it will be better with Alvarez? I do. Again, I don't know when I cut out, but for me, the most frustrating part is despite the fact that Luis Torrens has some ability defensively, I mentioned that, he's going to have these stretches where he hits for some pops, some doubles, some homers, things like that. He's not Francisco Alvarez, and that's a bummer because everybody wants to watch the 23-year-old catcher do his thing. But this is a good point with regards to where Alvarez is seen or where his value is as a part of this organization right now. The one thing that I will throw as a caveat to this or as a counterpoint to this is that with Alvarez's bat out of the lineup, you do have to hit Luis Torrens probably eighth, which means Jeff McNeil has to hit higher than you would like. And so there is a trickle-down effect that it's not just a one-for-one with regards to the catching position. So jump into the comments here. Stanley Babbage says, do the Mets bring back James McCann to fill in for Francisco Alvarez? Ibby, I'll let you go ahead and take that one since you're waving your hands like a madman.
No. I know it's an honest and fair question, Stanley. But I was saying in Ant Rivera's chat last night, like he mentioned McCann, and I said, Ant, that is the one name that is not to be spoken. We do not say that name anymore. We are finally out from that. It is done and finished. Don't need him coming back. I understand he's a solid defensive catcher or what have you. don't need to revisit, don't need to rehash anything. There's no point, in my opinion, based off of what we're asking said catchers to do, to go outside of the organization. So James McCann, no thank you. I saw someone else, it might have been Zero Cool, or someone said that Yasmani Grandal is older than dirt. It's like, it's true. You don't need him either. Like, just stay with what you have and just roll with the punches and do what you can with what you have. That's it.
Remember, 100%, 110% tax that Armand says here on any deal once the deal becomes, a major league contract. So even if they were to sign them, let's say the Mets took a flyer on James McCann, gave him a minor league deal, he's probably going to beat out a guy like Hayden Sanger, right? Like, he's a major league catcher with a lot of time and a lot of experience. So once he makes the club, whatever that deal is for, $1 million, now it's just over $2, $3 million, now it's just over $6, whatever it is, it's going to get multiplied by 110%. And that is why you cannot do it. Now, this one is more interesting, I think. Douglas Barnes says, so no Tomas Nido either. Tomas Nido, I think, is a more intriguing concept only because he also knows this staff. He was also here more recently. He is also a guy who's a good receiver, who's been in the Mets organization for a long time. And he's a guy who is on a spring training invite with the Detroit Tigers. There is potential that if he doesn't make that team, you can maybe trade for his contract. You give up $100,000 or whatever, and you acquire him because Detroit knows that they have their starting catchers locked in. They have a young catcher that's probably going to be their backup. Nito's having a good spring, but he might not make the team anyway. And then you could go for this move. I still wouldn't do it because I don't think any of those guys are markedly better defensively than Hayden Sanger anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's what you want in a backup catcher. Torrens is going to get the lion's share of the starts. There are a lot of off days early in the season. So if he can catch 4 or 5 games, in a row, essentially, you do the day game after the night game, or, you swap him out and give him a night game off. He catches the next day. You're looking at a spot where your backup catcher, Ibby, maybe only has to play a handful of times in 3 weeks or in 4 weeks. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, I just wouldn't go outside of the organization, although Tomas Nido, to me, is more attractive than any free agent, whether that be James McCann, Grandal, or whoever else you want to throw out there.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think that there's an overall benefit. And I think a lot of times, like when you have someone like an Alvarez, we kind of get spoiled a little bit from the offensive standpoint. And when you look around the league, like, are there strong offensive catchers throughout baseball? Yeah, there's a handful. But a lot of times when you're looking at the position, it's a guy that's more built on defense and handling a staff and batting at the bottom of the lineup. Like, you're not always gifted the opportunity to have a player that can bat upwards of 5th or 6th or even sometimes even 3rd within your lineup because he provides such offensive pop. We lose something like that because he could have been batting as high as, let's say, 6th for this team if he was really chugging along, and that sucks. And I'm with you when it comes to the whole trickle-down effect. I do agree with that. But we have good receivers on this team. I'm fine with Torrens getting the lion's share for these next, call it, the next month or so once the season actually kicks off. So I think they're going to be okay. I didn't really run for the hills like a lot of Mets fans did when this news dropped. It was more so like a damn. Like it was more like
it's
one
just
of those
disappointing. It's not earth-shattering, but it is upsetting.
No. But some people really were upset about it. It's like, I get being upset, but it's like I didn't think that it was going to be a derailment for the team. More so of it sucks for him. And I thought that he was going to take a step this year, and I wanted to see him, in a lineup early to kick things going, to start the season off, to get something established moving forward with the likes of Soto and obviously Lindor and Soto at the top. And then you have the step forward with Vientos and Pete's back. And you got Nimmo. It's to see him being a part of the early goings of that. Again, it's May, best case scenario. But I'm here. Am I here?
Yeah.
I'm here. Okay. Best case scenario, that's what happens. He's back in May. And, hopefully he can pick up quickly and hold the power isn't gone for the entire year, and it's something that can eventually all-star break.
Yeah, and look, a lot of people in the comments kind of sharing that sentiment. It's funny, these two came back to back from Michael and from Odd Villain. Michael says, could be worse. Odd Villain said, could have been worse, like literally seconds after each other. But we do want to hear from everybody. There is a lot of kind of side comments happening, tangential to this conversation about spring training numbers and April numbers and things like that. But if you are in the comments, if you are watching live, and of course, if you're on YouTube, the only way to make sure that your comments are heard is to subscribe to the channel. That's how you get your comments across. We want to know, should the Mets go outside the organization or stay within the organization to replace Francisco Alvarez? Again, in the short term, this is a 6 to 8 week injury. The procedure, pretty standard, very boilerplate. This is something that happens. I think this timetable is very realistic. 6 to 8 weeks, maybe a couple tune-up games, and he'll be back out there. Ibby and I both think going outside the organization is not worth it. Odd Villain also saying no need to go outside the organization, not worth it. And Ronald with a good addition here saying Hayden Sanger has been catching a lot of these Mets pitchers for a while now too as well. And I think that's the other side of it. Again, you are looking for a backup catcher. What you're always looking for is a guy who is defensive first. That becomes harder when your regular backup catcher gets elevated to your number one and he's already a defensive first guy. But like Ibby already alluded to, that is the case around Major League Baseball. For 95% of the teams, there are not a tremendous amount of plus offensive players at catcher in the major leagues right now. That's what elevates Alvarez. That's what makes Alvarez so exciting and so intriguing. So yeah, I mean, Brad, this is a good one, saying if it was later in the season, you'd go external. If this is something that happened where you're like, man, the Mets really have this huge hole, or he's going to be out for, 3 months, 4 months. It's this massive injury. Then I think you can consider going outside the organization. Ibby, I don't know if this is crazy. I'll just bring it up because people have already brought it up. Stanley Babbage, people on YouTube, people on Twitter, everything like that. If Alvarez was out for like a long time, I would entertain even a James McCann. I know that's a horrible name to bring up. I know it's one of those, he's become this Daniel Vogelback type character. Nobody wants to hear that name in Mets fandom again. But if this was a long-term injury, that would open up my eyes to, okay, we have to replace him in some way, shape, or form significantly. But I think that changes the math. I think the 6 to 8 weeks thing, hamate bone, pretty straightforward procedure, that's what really undoes any kind of going outside the organization for me.
Yeah, I think the fact that it happened when it happened in the spring, it's not going to cut too much into the season, assuming all things go proper, of course. Now, of course, I should also preface this by saying that us Mets fans always think of injuries and we always add the Met tax to that, or the Met month, or whatever you want to call it. I try to get out of that way of thinking. That thought process kind of died, in my opinion. Once new ownership came in, and I chose to think of things in a different light. So I'm not going to think in that way, but I know that a lot of Mets fans still feel that way, and I understand it to an extent, but I do think you need to move forward. So I'm going to assume 6 to 8 weeks is what is going to happen. And then when he gets back, he plugs right back in and works his way back up in terms of his overall power and his overall approach. But yeah, because it happened when it happened, because of the time frame that it is, I'm with you. I don't think this is something where you need to panic. And like I said in the chat, I did post a poll, and it was a simple one. Make sure you throw in a vote if you haven't already. Do you think the Mets should go outside the organization for another catcher? Yes, need more than Torrens, or no, Torrens and Sanger is fine. Right now, 17 votes are in. 82% say no. 18% say yes. Make sure you get your voice heard, not only in the chat, but putting in a vote as well.
I want to bring up a couple of these comments here. First from Keith, the media goon, saying the Mets for the first time have enough offense to hide a purely defensive catcher. I think that's a good point.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Any of us who are Mets fans here that go back, Jesus, any length of time. It doesn't matter if your fandom goes back to the 80s or the 60s. It doesn't matter if you're a younger fan and it goes back to, the late 90s, the early 2000 team. It doesn't matter where your fandom originates from. The Mets have not had great offenses historically when they have not had a very good to great offensive catcher as a part of the mix, right? You look at obviously Mike Piazza, obviously Gary Carter, but then even, sneaky moments from guys like Paul LaDuca, who, had a couple really great years here, hitting 2 behind Reyes when, offenses and lineups were built a bit differently. Of course, you go back to Grody, and there has not been these times where you can look at a Mets team and say, you know what, this lineup is great, and they can afford to carry, a defensive first player at X position, whether it's a position like catcher or center field or whatever. And the Mets finally do have a deep lineup. According to MLB.com, they have them ranked as the second best lineup in Major League Baseball. Now, I think that's a little too high. I think it's nice to get a little bit of love from, the MLB and the national media, but the Mets definitely have a top 5 lineup in Major League Baseball. They might even have a top 3 lineup in Major League Baseball. I'm just not sure it's the next best one behind the Dodgers, but they do, to Keith's point here, they have a good enough offense to hide a purely defensive catcher. I want to bring up this next one to segue the conversation just a bit, and then we'll move on from Alvarez. Odd Villain says, Kevin Parada has entered the chat, and then says, psych, he was kidding. But Ibby, this is one of those moments where if Kevin Parada had shown anything, this would be his opportunity. Kevin Parada has been in the organization for a long time. He has been horrendous. He has basically gone from, whatever his highest ranking as a prospect was to non-prospect at this point. But if he had shown anything, this would be an opportunity for him. But it is. I'm going to leave up psych because it's not even close for Parada.
I don't even know what to think of Kevin Parada anymore. He's fallen so far off of a lot of people. He hasn't shown anything. The defense hasn't been there at all. Really shown improvements there. The bat has never really materialized at all either. But I agree with you. Like, this could have been an opportunity, but no, not there. Nothing to get excited about either. Not even a name that even gets brought up. This is why you say automatically you think of the names like Torrens being here, and then you bring up the likes of Sanger and Jackson Reitz and guys like that. And it's like, what about Kevin Parada? It's like, no, nowhere near that guy. Most likely not going to be in this organization. I would say, because it's just not. It hasn't. Unless he finds it this year to show some sort of progression, I think it's a name that you're not going to be hearing much more.
No, yeah, the world. The Mets career of Kevin Parada is not long for this world at this point, because he just, like you said, if he doesn't put something together right now, this is kind of his last opportunity, to show something, to show some semblance of consistency. And look, the Mets went outside the organization, brought in a couple spring training invitees for catchers, because the Mets don't have a significant amount of depth with major league experience on the 40-man roster. I think to this point, Ibby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, or, somebody can check it out and look it up, just to make sure. But I think the Mets only have 2 catchers on the 40-man roster right now. I think it's just Torrens and Alvarez. Sanger might be on there. There might be a third guy, but they're going to have to add somebody, is my point, either way. And it just goes to show you, where this depth or lack thereof has been sitting for such a long time. And when you look at Sanger, I think he's the kind of guy who you could have as a cost-controlled third catcher for a while. I think he can just be this guy who sticks around and is on the 40-man roster for as long as you want to 40-man him. And Charlie's saying just 2 on the 40-man right now. So,
yeah,
you know what? I think it really comes down to that where, this is an opportunity. That's another reason why I wouldn't go outside of the org when I think about this, Ibby. You can bring back Tomas Nido, but you already know what's going on with Tomas Nido. I don't think Hayden Senger is going to be any kind of, unbelievable revelation, but defensively he can do the job. So why not just put him on the 40-man? You can carry him on the 40-man for the next X amount of years with his options. He can be your third catcher. He can slide up. He could be your backup. To me, it's just the smartest move to stay in the organization for all of those reasons. And I really don't think that you need to, kind of overthink this right now.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any reason to overthink it. I think we've spoken more about it than we probably even should have, like just trying to rationalize certain things. But ultimately, yeah, I think that this team is fine where they are. I think you can really revert all the way back to what Keith's comment was. It's like this offense has enough juice to it where you can afford to just have a defensive first catcher batting at the bottom of your lineup and hopes that he can help turn the lineup over at some points. But ultimately, go out there, handle the staff, and that's it. So I think that ultimately that's what's going to happen, and I think they stay in-house. There's no reason to pay the money to bring in a player that's probably not even better than what you're getting from the guys you already have in-house. Let them play, work through it, and see what's what.
Yeah, let's move on to, I think, the positive side of the battery, pun fully intended, which is despite the injuries that the Mets have seen specifically in the starting rotation, and the fact that some of their bullpen guys not 100% ready to go yet. Daniel Nunez gearing up to get into a game. We thought maybe AJ Minter wasn't going to be ready. Now it seems like he gets into a game today, looks really good. Maybe he doesn't quite break camp with the team. None of that stuff's a really big deal when it comes to relievers. You might miss a guy for a few days here and there if they need a little bit of extra time. And of course, Nunez and Minter both coming off of injuries. So when you're dealing with relief pitchers, though, they don't have to ramp up the way starting pitchers do. So to me, it'd be whether or not, like, obviously you want to have your best bullpen on day one, but you're going to have guys moving up, moving down, going from Syracuse, riding the bus back and forth all season long. That's how major league teams deal with their pitching in 2025 anyway. So I don't think it's a huge deal for the bullpen guys who breaks camp with the team necessarily, as long as everybody is, from a big picture standpoint, mostly healthy. The starting rotation, though, we've made a lot about it over the last couple weeks. The injury to Montas, the injury to Minaya, the starting rotation really takes a hit. But now you see Griffin Canning come out and really pitch his ass off the last couple times. You see Tyler McGill really showing some stuff. Paul Blackburn, who was abysmal, looked really good today. Only 2 strikeouts, but he threw 4 perfect innings. The pitching lab is real. I just want to say that. And when I bring up those 3 names, I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm about to say here. I do not think that Tyler McGill is going to become an ace all of a sudden. I don't think that Griffin Canning is going to go from being the worst pitcher based on ERA last year to, an ace the way that Severino was for us for parts of last year when he came over with a terrible ERA. And I don't think Paul Blackburn is all of a sudden going to have this massive uptick in stuff that's going to make him, a top flight pitcher. But what we're seeing is that there are guys here with skills. Tyler McGill has good stuff. Griffin Canning has better stuff than his numbers would have shown last year. And I think when you're seeing them get into this pitching lab and you're seeing the pitching lab bring out the best and maybe find ways to hide the worst over here, you're looking at a situation where these guys can be serviceable major league pitchers. And that's really all you're looking for. Griffin Canning is only 1 season removed from being a serviceable major league starter. So, to see them bounce back in a way, I would not be surprised. I like where the Mets pitching is right now, despite the injuries.
I love the fact, and first of all, I should say, I don't care that it's against spring training lineups. We'll see how they do, obviously, once lineups ramp up as we get closer, and they're going to start putting out more of their everyday lineups of what they're going to see come the start of the season. But I love the fact that these guys are going out there and they're putting the work in and they're getting the results. And like we said, you look more towards the under the hood stuff. And when I keep on seeing these outings, my pitch profile, like we talked about last week, and I'm seeing what Griffin Canning did his last outing. He's yet to give up a run in 5 innings so far. He went 3 2/3, had 5 strikeouts his last start. What I'm seeing from Tyler McGill. Look, we've ripped Tyler McGill. I ripped him last week talking about it. We were putting out on some of our shorts and stuff and on TikTok. Like, I have an issue with his consistency. And he came out today, lo and behold, and he says, you know what I need to figure out this year? I got to figure out my consistency. Yeah, Tyler, you do. But I'm happy that he was able, number one, to self-assess and be honest with oneself when it comes to something like that, because you want to find that overall success. But he had a good outing, his last outing. He had a good outing his last time out, I should say. And I think 4 innings, handful of strikeouts, looking sharp. I'm happy that this lab is bringing forth results. Now, are these results going to carry into the regular season? That's the big question. We saw it last year when it helped the likes of Luis Severino and Sean Manaea. Is it going to do the same for the likes of Griffin Canning and Frankie Montas when he gets back? And can things continue for these other guys as well? Can Tyler McGill find said consistency? Because like we said, all the stuff in the world is there. But I'm ecstatic. I don't care about the wins and losses during the spring. I'm ecstatic that this starting rotation and the guys that are going to be a part of it are putting in the effort, and the results are there to where I can say that I trust the process. I trust the offense to provide for these pitchers. And ultimately, I trust for these pitchers to be able to get the ball over to the bullpen without taxing the bullpen. That's the biggest thing. They can't go out there and give 3 innings like Tyler McGill special. Can't do that. But if you go out there and you can provide that 5 innings, and then we can get to the bullpen, and maybe sometimes even mix in a 6 or 7 inning here and there, like, it goes a long way for this team. And I do believe that the talent is there for this team to do that.
Yeah, and look, I just want to take a moment here because Griffin Canning has been this polarizing figure since the Mets have signed him. And I don't think it's fair simply
for $4
because
million.
Right. Well, that's why I've said it since the moment it happened that not every signing is meant to be exciting. And this one should not upset you, nor should it get you excited. It's a depth piece. But when you look at the fact that Griffin Canning is 28 years old, not 38 years old, Griffin Canning is a guy who is clearly athletic. I know the Gold Glove Award is so watered down, but in 2020, shortened season, he did win a Gold Glove. He has athleticism, is my point. He did pitch despite the fact that he was one of the worst pitchers by a lot of metrics, including ERA last season. He pitched 170 innings. So he will go out there and he will eat innings. He's also a guy, though, who saw this huge uptick in allowing the home run ball and not striking guys out last year. Whereas in years past, he struck out more guys, didn't allow as many home runs, was better at controlling the walks. And again, just understand, Mets fans, I'm not trying to say that this guy is going to be the second coming. He's going to be some great top of the rotation guy. I'm not saying any of that. But he was signed for $4.25 million. People get angry when they look at Frankie Montas signing for $17 million to be your 4th or your 5th starter. $15, $16, $17 million is the going rate for starting pitching that is mediocre at best. So if you get Griffin Canning pitching to I don't know, maybe let's say 4.70 ERA, and maybe he could be a bit better than that. 4.70 was about what he did 2 years ago, where he had a 2-WAR season. If he pitches to a 4.70 ERA and gives you 150 to 170 innings, either as part of a 6-man rotation or as a swing man, you're getting incredible value for $4.25 million. Oh, and then add in that you're paying Clay Holmes $12 million, and he might be a top 3 pitcher for you in the rotation this season. So you start now to see the picture here when you say, you know what, Stearns is not going out and breaking the bank on 30-year-old pitchers, giving them 8-year contracts, paying them until they're on the other side of 35 after they've already done their most explosive work for another team. You're seeing the other side of the coin here. This is not always going to work. The pitching lab is not always going to reap benefits.
Right.
Some of these guys are going to fall flat on their faces. We saw it last year. Adrian Hauser, terrible.
Big time. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
But they cut bait with him. It didn't work, and it's fine. But a lot of the times, I would say slightly more often than not, this is going to work in some way. Now, it's not always going to be the Sean Manaea work. It's not always going to be the Luis Severino work. But again, if Griffin Canning gives you a 4.70 ERA in a 2-WAR season, that's working at $4.25 million. So you have to understand it in that context. You also have to understand, somebody said this earlier, I think it was D, finding a way to hide the shittiness, which was, paraphrasing what I was saying about, hiding the bad with these players, these pitchers. The Angels are regarded as one of the worst teams in Major League Baseball for developing pitching, and the Mets are quickly gaining a reputation of being one of the best. Now, they're going to have to continue to show that they can do it to get themselves in the upper echelon of teams, but they're already well on their way there. So allow this thing to play out a little bit. Maybe if the Mets could ever get a 4-something ERA out of Griffin Canning on $4.25 million, and if Clay Holmes becomes your 3 starter at $12 million, that is a win, is a win, is a win, is a win all damn day.
Especially when you see what you're paying for pitchers nowadays, when it comes to getting results like that. Those guys get $15, $18 million, as we see with Frankie Montas. But look, I think that, and you keep on mentioning Clay Holmes. I have to bring up Clay Holmes real quick, mainly because I'm very, very, and I'm very excited for the bold prediction show when we do it. When we do the bold prediction show, because I'm sure both of us will have some pretty staggering numbers when it comes to Clay Holmes. But shout out to him for getting down there early. I said this last week, getting down there early, getting the work in, getting ready to be stretched out to be a starter. But how about the fact that so far, the introduction to this kick change, and of course, shout out always to Matthew Brownstein, who always brings the fantastic stats to Twitter. Clay Holmes' whiff percentage on the kick change this spring is at 53.3%, 15 swings, 8 misses. Love to see it. His overall spring to this point, 9 2/3 innings pitched, 2 hits, no earned runs, 13 strikeouts. I know that those numbers don't mean anything because it doesn't apply to the regular season. But when I see the transition, that's the focus here. When I see a guy going out there, commanding the mound, getting forth results, while being a relief pitcher predominantly for his career. Yes, he started with Pittsburgh, but has his ups and downs with being said reliever, but ultimately still damn good reliever. Now he comes back, and now he's getting these results. It just speaks volumes, in my opinion, about what's going on with this team and how it's starting to become one of said pitching factories that we've always heard about. We've always wanted things like this for the Mets. John always uses the example, you go to the Rays, it's just a random guy with a funky delivery, and he's throwing 100 miles an hour, and you see it every single time that they're on television. It's like, where do they get these guys? They know how to develop. The biggest thing I've always been saying, the Mets need to do a better job at developing. They're finally doing it with not only their own system, as that's starting to get better and better, but we talked about this probably a while ago. I mentioned this. Everyone mentions the Dodgers as a model. The Dodgers do a great job of rehabbing guys and getting them back out there. And that's the point that John was making also when we're talking about the Griffin Cannings, taking them from a place like the Angels, where I said last week, the one draft, they took 20 pitchers and one of them panned out. 20 arms, and one has panned out to the tone of being a near 5 ERA pitcher. So you get someone like that away with talent, you put them in a place so they can, execute and rehab them a bit so they can finally, see some success. That's what this team is finally doing. So yes, when I see success from guys like Canning, like Clay Holmes, Tyler, look, I'm still very skittish. I have to see the consistency, like he spoke on today, that he needs to establish within himself. But other than that, like, I'm very happy with what I'm seeing, and I'm very confident that this team can handle themselves from the starting pitching standpoint, even though a majority of people that speak on this team, or I should say try to speak on this team, keep on saying that this pitching is going to hold this team back. I don't believe that. I really don't.
I think it's narrative driven because they don't have a sexy name. And
yes, 1,000%.
You know, one, it's immediacy bias because look, Kodai Senga has his issues. He had injury issues in Japan.
Sure.
He's had injury issues since he's gotten here. But on the flip side of that, people also forget how good Kodai Senga was when he pitched. Kodai Senga got Cy Young votes. Kodai Senga finished second in the Rookie of the Year. Kodai Senga had a 2.98 ERA. Kodai Senga had 200 and something strikeout. Like what he had crazy strikeout numbers in 160 innings or whatever he pitched. Like Kodai Senga is very good, but you forget about him because he didn't pitch last year. Now, part of that is fair. Part of that is unfair. Sean Manaea at times was dominant, ace level dominant last year. Will he do that again? I'm not 100% sure. Do I think he can? Yes. Do I think he easily can't? I would say it's a little bit better than a coin flip that he's, good, like that good again. But I could see it going either way. I understand where there are the downturns for this rotation from a national media perspective, from fans of other teams. They're going to look at Clay Holmes and go, oh my God, could you make that happen? Well, it keeps happening. Other teams keep doing it. San Diego just did it with Michael King. You just saw it with, what's his name? The dude who throws super hard that was in the Cardinals bullpen. They made him a starter. God.
I'm blanking. Recently?
I forgot his name. He just signed with last year. His name will come to me. Whatever. Anyway, the point is these guys are becoming starting pitchers after being relief pitchers. So when you look at it, they didn't do the sexy, splashy thing. No, you're here. You're here, Abby. They didn't do the sexy, splashy thing. They didn't go out and give 8 years to Corbin Burns. They didn't go out and give the most ill-conceived contract of all time to Max Fried. They didn't do those things, but it doesn't mean that they don't know what they're doing. That's the part that sets this aside. So I want to jump back to the comments. Just take a few of these, just kind of all over the pitching conversation. Charlie said Blackburn had 4 great innings today. Good to see. Yeah. Ronald said, the pitching lab changed my life. I think that is true. Zero Cool saying Canning is a beneficiary of the lab for sure. We've got Ronald saying Rick Peterson could fix Victor Zambrano with this pitching lab. I totally agree with that. Armand saying McGill, Blackburn, Canning just have to be average pitchers, a.k.a. keep the Mets above water until Manaea and even Montas return. I would just take that one step further. They just have to be average pitchers, period.
In general,
that's good enough.
Yeah.
It's not even until they get back. That's just what you need from them is just be average. That would be fine. And why would that be fine? Because of what Carson says here. $4.25 million goes to middle relievers when talking about Griffin Canning. He's a tax write-off if he stinks. So when you look at it from that standpoint, the money does matter. Michael's saying, can we do for McGill what we've done for Peterson? I'll jump back to that in a second.
That's on McGill. Yeah.
Yeah. Ronald saying we may never have to give out a 6+ year again contract to a starting pitcher again, which is a good thing. Develop. Yeah.
Yes.
Give it to the guys. Listen, Brandon Sproat comes up in May. He is lights out. Then you know what? Next year or the year after, give him a 6-year deal or an 8-year deal. When he's young, sign him then. Give him an extension early. Don't sign these guys when they're 31 years old to 8-year contracts. I'll segue back, Ibby, to give you the point on this with McGill, because I think you're spot on when you say that's up to him.
No, I think when it comes to Peterson, it's about putting in the work too. And I just feel like we've seen good from David Peterson. It's just about finding said consistency for him as well. And last year, it feels like he finally put everything together. But again, that's on the player to do these things. And McGill, outside of a couple of starts here and there, it's like he's never been able to build off of said things because he can't find said consistency. That is a player thing. You can be given all the tools in the world. You're given everything. You're given the data. You're given everything you need to break down and do. Then it becomes you go out there and you have to apply these things. If you apply these things, you can be something. We still have to see Tylor Megill do that. He has the stuff, but he hasn't been able to apply this on a consistent basis. David Peterson went out there last year and did it. It's going to be big if he can do it again. I think mentally he's finally reached that point where he knows he can be a pitcher in this league. I'm not saying he's going to be, David Peterson that is, saying he's going to be a dominant all-world lefty. That's not who he is. But he can go out there and he can do the job and he can get out of jams. He can do whatever he has to do to help his team win a ball game. Tylor Megill can do the same thing, but you have to go out there and actually do. Here's all the tools. Go to work, man. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's funny. I like this comment because Michael nails it with the comparison. David Peterson has good stuff. Tylor Megill has good stuff. This is different than Canning or even Blackburn, right? There is a limitation. I know I just spoke about the athleticism and some of the ability that Canning has where you can refine it, but there is no question that Tylor Megill has better stuff than Griffin Canning or Paul Blackburn. There is no question that David Peterson has better stuff than both of those guys. David Peterson had to figure out the mental side of it, staying in it, pitching, learning how to harness the stuff, not being too perfect, not having 80 pitches, having 4 really good ones, knowing how to work effectively in the zone and not nibble on the corners. They're two different people, him and Megill, but you could say a lot of what I just said about Megill as well. Ibby, Tylor Megill can throw near 100 miles an hour. He's 6'7". His, reach, like the extra distance he gets when he throws off the mound is like 7.5 feet. That is among the best in baseball in terms of deception and closing down the 60 feet, 6 inches. He should be dominant. Now, I don't know that he ever will. There are people, baseball is littered with people with great ability that never make it. But the point is, this is on Megill. He has to find a way to harness it. And that's why the lab thing with him is a little different. Because I do think the pitching lab does help you, no matter the pitcher, identify things that you can do better or different, whether it's grips, whether it's, trying to induce more vertical break on fastballs or get more horizontal break on breaking pitches or whatever the case may be. But I don't think that Tylor Megill's biggest issue is in his arm or his ability. I think it's in his brain. And the pitching lab can't fix this. And that's why you see a guy like Griffin Canning, who does not have the ability that Tylor Megill has in his arm, go to the pitching lab and say, oh, okay, well, if I tweak this, if I do that, you see the buy-in and you see the results. Now, early returns, small sample size, spring training, I understand all that. But because he's just taking it and he's applying it, can Tylor Megill do it up here? That's the question, ultimately.
Yeah, baseball is an incredible game. Baseball is a weird game at times, but ultimately, confidence is what really drives a player to greatness or being, what they're supposed to be. If you don't have that confidence, to John's point, like sometimes you can have all the talent in the world, but it just doesn't equate to, what's being put out on the field. And a lot of times that comes down to overall confidence. You get humbled here and there. You're used to being the best at wherever you play because you were the guy there, but then there's an entire world that's also really good at this game, and you got to go out there and you got to prove it. You got to do it. And he has the stuff. He's got the pitches. He's got the velocity. He's got everything. He's got the size. He's got everything that you want for a guy. He's been given a lot of opportunity. So many opportunities to the point where we speak on it when we had the girls from Why Am I Mets Fan on talking about Tylor, how he's the cockroach and what have you. It's just like he's always there. It's all these chances, doesn't go away. And it's like, this is it, man. like I said when it came to Brett Beatty, like this is your chance, this is your opportunity. Go do. Same thing with McGill here. This is another season. Here's your opportunity. There's injuries. Go out there, man, and do. Otherwise, you're not going to be here. You're not.
I'm going to bring up this comment really quick before we head into the break from Carlos Ramos saying, John, I would counter your McGill point by saying we have to ask if management is not helping McGill by asking him to be a starter. He's proven that he is not a starter, but is still asked to start. While I understand that comment and I don't even necessarily disagree, the one thing that I will throw as a counterpoint to the counterpoint, if I may, is that right now he has to be a starter. The Mets don't have the depth because their depth is being tested early. So right now he has to be a starter. He just has to. Now, if the counter argument to that is, what about Jose Butto? Well, Jose Butto proved to be a weapon, not just okay, not just mediocre, not good enough to be in the bullpen, an absolute weapon in the bullpen. If the counter to that is a guy like Max Kranick, who's been a starter for points of his career, he's shown a significant uptick since the Mets moved him to a full-time bullpen role last year in the minor leagues, and so much so that it seems like his stuff has played up and he's going to be ticketed for the Mets opening day bullpen. So they don't have the options right now that you can just say, you know what, let's take that Jose Butto treatment, let's take that Max Kranick treatment, and let's apply it to Tyler McGill. In general, Carlos, I agree, but today, March 12th, 2025, you can't make that argument because they need him to be a starter. This is the guy I was thinking of. It'd be Jordan Hicks. Thank you to Odd Villain and so many other people who shot it. I always forget his name. I don't know why I have this like blank spot in my brain for his name, but Jordan Hicks. And then Charlie bring up Seth Lugo as another example. I mentioned Michael King. There are so many folks. With that said, we've got 2 super chats sitting here. Let's head into the break, though. Come out of the break. We will hit on those super chats and more. This is Til Mets Do Us Part. You're watching us live on Twitter. You're watching us live on YouTube. Do not go anywhere. If this is your first time watching with us and you're like, I don't want to sit through a break, it is just a 30-second reset and an ad spot we need for the audio version of this show. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, Til Mets Do Us Part. We'll be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, like we are each and every single week, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time or thereabouts. Quick apologies, by the way. In the first half, we had some issues with our Wi-Fi. Abby and I not in the same location, of course, very well documented. We live about, 2,800 miles apart from each other, but we're both having issues almost at the same time with our Wi-Fi. Hopefully that is resolved, and hopefully it didn't bring us to too much of a standstill there for the few moments where it was in and out. We are back. We are ready to rock. Like I mentioned at the top of the show, this podcast is free. It is available wherever it is you get your shows, including here on YouTube. The live version, though, is the best way for you to become a full-fledged participant in the show. Your questions, your comments, your concerns, your heckles, your thoughts, your jokes, your super chats, all of that stuff only available here in the live version on YouTube. And the best way to make sure that you are fully committed to the show is to subscribe so that your comments can be seen by myself, Ibby, and the rest of the chats. Become such a big part of the show. But it does drop as an audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts tomorrow morning. So if you can't be with us here for the live show, if you can't watch the replay because you're like, listen, man, I'm at work, I can't watch this on my work computer on replay, I will listen to you guys. We got you covered there as well. Tomorrow morning, you can get this as an audio show. Ibby, before we get back into the comments, starting off with those super chats, thank you, by the way, to those 2 folks. Let's get a quick word from our friends over at Independent Safe.
Absolutely, John. IndependentSafes.com. Independent Safes are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. Fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit IndependentSafes.com today for security that stands strong. And do I want to put, maybe I'll put Tyler McGill's brain in a safe so we can just toss it out and put a brand new one in there for him so we can understand his potential and he can help us as a team moving forward. But other than that, I don't think I'm too angry. There are some things that we'll hit on later on in the show, but I don't like giving too much credence to people that don't deserve much, vocal, attention like they want. But if anyone knows what I'm hinting at, I'm talking about a specific interview that our captain shortstop Francisco Lindor was on a couple days ago, which is a little bit nonsense in my opinion, but I would take that and throw that into the safe as well and throw it into the river and toss away the key. But other than that, independentsafes.com. Tell them Til Mets sent you. They'll hook you up. $99. Everything's $99. Free shipping. Tell them we sent you. They'll take care of you.
Ibby, this is purely for you. You're the independent safes guy. Carson wants to know, can we put the nickname Swaggy V in the safe? I'm sorry. That nickname sucks.
No, because you said it, Carson. If somebody else said it, I would think about it. But because it bothers you so much, I kind of want to keep it. I want to get it maybe plastered on the back wall over here so I can have something. Because I do plan on dressing up this. I know everyone loves the brick back here, but I am planning on dressing this up a little bit. So maybe I'll just put like Swaggy V in all brick, all block letters on the back just for you, Carson. But we're going to keep that one around because I think it's funny when things bother you.
Shout out to Armand saying, I can watch it work. Followed it up by saying, screw my job. Fair enough. We like that kind of commitment. Really, really like that kind of commitment. We do have 2 super chats, so I want to get to those.
We do, yes. Thank you so much.
Hebrew Hammer, thank you for the $5. Appreciate that very, very, very much. And
thank you.
The super chat here just says, never see any super chats in here. Everybody needs to contribute even $1 or $2. Otherwise, the season will be a bust. Ibby, I just say thank you to Hebrew Hammer for coming out here and appreciate the support, honestly. Little dark on the back end there saying the season will be a bust, putting that out into the universe. But you know what?
We don't want to put that in the universe. It's appreciated.
I'm not going to say no.
I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say no. It's again, it's always thankful. I should say me and John are always thankful when someone gives $1, $2, $5, whatever it is. Anything and everything helps with the growth of the show. So Hebrew, the fact that he gave us $5 right here to just say something like this is extremely appreciative. And we are very thankful for you as a viewer. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate, the support that comes in for this show, no matter how it comes in. But yes,
of course,
the super chats always, much, much, much appreciated. Helps us out. And eventually we'll be able to buy Ibby that Wi-Fi. It'll be
I'm working on
Wi-Fi. It. Although I can't really talk shit now, but I don't know what happened. I don't know. My girlfriend's home today. She's working from home. We're probably both on, virtual calls or something. And, it was just like, no, I can't handle all that. That's too much. But shout out to Hebrew Hammer for that one. And then the next one from Darren Rivera. Thank you also for the
man.
$5, $4.99, saying, do you think this is the year a Met finally wins MVP? And who do you think wins it?
Well, I mean, you're cutting the line a little bit here, Darren, but because you gave the $4.99, we got to answer this because it is a question, because this could go clearly into the bold prediction show as well. But do I hear a Met finally wins an MVP? I do. I do think that this is the first year that a Met wins an MVP. John?
Okay. Here's my issue. Not issue. Thank you for the question.
Yes.
It's so hard to predict what will happen with regards to this stuff on any given year. Right. So a lot of people are going to say it's not that hard to predict. Ohtani's the golden boy. Ohtani's going to go back to pitching. As long as Ohtani has a representative year pitching and hitting, he's likely to win the MVP. That is fair. But I think we've seen it in other leagues where MVP fatigue is real, right? Like you just saw Josh Allen win an MVP in the NFL where he was clearly one of the top candidates, but there was a case to be made that Lamar Jackson should have won the MVP. He had some better stats in almost every category. But a couple of years ago, Lamar Jackson won the MVP when maybe Dak Prescott should have won the MVP because he had some better stats in almost every spot. So sometimes these things, we like to think that they're objective and we like to think that they're super fair. There is a bit of bias, and we've seen it with the way some other things operate. Now, I understand the MVP votes are not how all-star votes are tabulated, but Francisco Lindor has yet to make an all-star team as a New York Met. That is an insane sentence to say out loud. Now, I know a lot of that is on the fan voting, but the fans, after the first year, love Francisco Lindor. He is adored by this fan base, and rightfully so. So he's not getting voted in by the fans. Okay, that happens. Maybe Met fans aren't coming out and voting. They're not doing it enough. They're not stuffing the ballot box, if you will. But then he's not making the team when other entities are getting their hands on it as well. So there is some bias that happens there. I think he made a great push late. Obviously, he got hurt last year. But maybe you and I talked about it on the show. He was not going to beat Ohtani. Not with what Ohtani was doing.
Right.
It wasn't going to happen. Now, having said all of that, as good as Francisco Lindor is, and he is great, he's the best all-around player on the Mets. The Mets have a guy now in Juan Soto who can actively challenge for the MVP, because let's face it, it's an offensive award mostly, who can challenge for the MVP every single year. Do I think this is the year it happens? I gave you the long version. The short version, not a cop-out. I don't know. But I do think the Mets will win at least one MVP over the 15 years of Juan Soto's career. And I think Juan Soto will be the guy to do it. If it happens this year, that's terrific. If it happens next year, that's fine too. Juan Soto will win an MVP, maybe more than one as a New York Met. I don't know how you feel about that thought.
Yeah. I don't think I appreciate the approach that you went with, because you're right. It's very difficult to just project these things because there's a lot more that goes into it. I do believe, I'll put it this way. The main reason why I think Juan Soto can win an MVP
and just
year,
sorry,
I should say this year.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was
sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
Why I think that's okay. Why I think he can win one this year, and that's obviously my choice, Juan Soto, because of the point that John made. He's a guy that's always been viewed in the upper echelon, and sometimes you have to just be viewed within said echelon to even get a shot at winning something, unless you have an incredible out-of-this-world season that just comes out of left field, and people are like, oh my God, we have to give it to this guy. But those things often happen, to John's point, because of said MVP fatigue. Mike Trout should have more MVPs.
Right.
Mike Trout should have a lot more MVPs. But
Exactly.
What happens? Other people had these otherworldly years that's what it took, even though you could still argue in those given years that Trout should have won. Like, I always think of like the Donaldson year and stuff like that. Like, other guys have to come out of left field to really get it, and they have to be otherworldly to even challenge. And yes, I understand Ohtani's coming back and all this stuff. He's pitching. Do I think that it's just going to be Ohtani on lock for the next handful of years? You could argue it from a standpoint. You could, from the numbers that he'll probably provide. But do I think that that's what's going to happen? I don't. And the reason why I say the Mets can get one this year is because if Juan Soto goes out there and is a part of a team again, that his presence allows them to be top flight, to be top of the league, to be putting up ridiculous numbers as he continues to show that he is the reason why teams go places. He goes to a non-playoff Yankee team and then takes them to the World Series while putting up incredible numbers. Yes, he played with Aaron Judge, but having him there sure as hell did help Aaron Judge. So all those things considered, I think that Juan Soto can be that guy. And I wouldn't be shocked if this ended up being the year, because I think from a looks perspective, it's too chalky for them to just go automatically to Ohtani again, because that's what everybody assumes. That's why he's the odds-on favorite. But if you're betting money on it, I would throw some shekels down on Juan Soto's odds because I do think he can. I think he could get it this year. I do.
That's entirely fair. And I think the reason why I was so, I don't want to say negative. The reason why I was so realistic about my answer is, my heart wants to say, yes, Juan Soto is going to win the MVP this year. The Mets are going to be great. He's going to continue to be great. He's going to be so good. It's going to be undeniable that he wins the MVP, even as good as Ohtani is, because Juan Soto also is that good. They both have the capability, and throw Aaron Judge into the mix. And obviously there's some other players too, Bobby Witt and these guys who are on the come up, where they're so good. They could do something every year. It's not going to surprise anyone if any one of those guys walks away with an MVP. But I just have to separate the heart from the head, throw a little bit of logic in there, and throw some cold water on my feelings because, again, it's just so hard to forecast year to year. But you do make a good point where if Juan Soto is Juan Soto, which we all think he will be for the Mets this year, and the Mets make it back to the playoffs, I know that the voting for that stuff wraps up at the end of the regular season. The playoffs aren't a factor. But if Juan Soto is the guy and the Mets have a good season and, Ohtani does what he does, I could see the voters leaning maybe towards Soto a bit just because it's like, oh, look how exciting and new and fresh this is. But at the same time, just because Ohtani didn't pitch last year, if Ohtani does what he does on both sides of the ball, he's going to win it again. Yeah. That's my hesitancy there. Charlie says Lindor and Soto will compete for Mets MVP votes, but Ohtani will end up winning. We've got another super chat here from Hebrew Hammer. We'll jump back into this one.
Thank you, Hebrew.
Thank you. $5 on the super chat, saying, just to continue the conversation, you watch, Mark Vientos will be an MVP at some point, ! People are sleeping way too much on him. Ibby, it's early in Mark Vientos' career. This is I wouldn't qualify this. It's almost a hot take. This is a very bullish take on Mark Vientos from Hebrew Hammer. It's hot. It's a hot take.
It's hot. Yeah.
Your thoughts on just the possibility of this, or the likelihood of this kind of a situation playing out for Mark Vientos? I know that's a lot to ask you, but
it's a tough question. And I do think that this is a very hot take, mainly because it's still so early in the development for Vientos. And I think the power is there. And we've seen that in spades to this point. It's about further developing more as a hitter. Can he have a season, like, put it this way, in order for Mark Vientos, in my opinion, to get to that level, he's going to have to become a player the ilk of Manny Machado, like peak Manny Machado. And I think, look, I don't like doing the whole comp thing or saying that this is what you have to be, because it's unfair to the player, because go out there and be you. And I do think that Mark Vientos can be a consistent 30 to 35 homer bat, but it's the rest of the game that I got to see develop still. The strikeouts coming down a little bit, even though no one really cares about average anymore, but it's still a point of discussion, if you will, when it comes to the MVP and things like that, because it's got to look pretty across the board. Can an outlier season like that happen? Absolutely. Would I say that it's going to happen? I hope it does, but I can't sit here and say that it would, because I think it's still way too early in his career from the things that we've been able to see. And I don't want to put all the stock in the world that he's going to be unconscious all the time like he was in the playoffs.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say to that. Rafael Devers has a career 22.5 WAR.
And he's pretty good.
Rafael Devers has never finished higher than 11th for the MVP. And the reason why I bring up Devers is because Devers is a horrible third baseman. I think Vientos is already a better third baseman than Devers.
But if he asks if he's going to move off third, he's going to tell you, no, not moving off. No.
But I think Vientos is already a better third baseman. I think that's fair to say. That's how bad Devers is. And yeah, look, good point here from Zero Cool. Devers is a creature of Fenway. Maybe there's some benefit to him playing there. Obviously, as a lefty, you could play Pepper with that wall out in left field, all this stuff. Yeah. But my point is, just to bring back the super chat, I would love to see this, man. And I think there's a clutch gene in Vientos where Vientos could have a crazy good year. Like, can I see Vientos hitting 40 something home runs and, 100 and whatever RBI? Yeah, but that wins you the MVP in 1998. That wins you
Different
the MVP
type of player now. Yeah.
in 2003. That doesn't win you the MVP in 2025.
Yeah.
So that's the caution. Do I think he might have a massive offensive season in him? He might have more than one. Yeah. But I just think that he is not the all-around player that would get an MVP. Now, the counter to that is going to be Soto's not a great all-around player. Understand that. But Soto has also never had an on-base percentage under 400 in his career, and he came up when he was 19. So when you have a 400 on base and whatever it is, a 283 lifetime batting average, and you hit anywhere between 30 and 40 home runs every year, and all the peripheral numbers, Soto's on another planet. And I don't think that Vientos is on another planet offensively. I think he's very, very good. I think he can have an on another planet season, but maybe I think this is more likely. Vientos will be a silver slugger at some point, probably not an MVP.
I definitely think that that's fair, and I think that Carson's comment is spot on. Vientos would need to top Alonso's 2019 to be an MVP. Alonso finished 7th that year with a historic year. It's a different caliber of player that Vientos doesn't have the tool ceiling. And that really sums up where I was trying to go to. So thank you, Carson, for articulating it there. Where I just did something otherworldly. That odds are it would be an outlier type of season for something like that to happen. And I question if it can happen. But that's not to say that I don't think that he can be a damn good ball player for us, or I just said before, he could be a guy that consistently hits 30 to 35 home runs. There's nothing wrong with that if you can get that consistently, be it from if he's playing third base, if he's a DH, if he's playing first base, whatever it might be in the end. If you're providing those type of stats, you're doing damn good for this team.
Yeah, look, this is not a Red Sox show, but Zero Cool, just in the interest of saying he's merchant of Fenway. Devers, 292 batting average at Fenway, 268 on the road, 876 OPS at Fenway, 837 OPS on the road. It's not a massive drop off, but it is significant. No. The OPS is, I don't think he's a product of Fenway, but I do think Fenway helps him. Is that a fair thing to say about Devers? I don't think he's made by Fenway, but I think he is helped by Fenway. And Odd Villain saying Vientos gets bitches, but won't be an MVP. And that's not me saying that. And also, this is just a really funny exchange. I got to be honest. Zero Cool. I don't know if this is tongue in cheek or not, saying Mets' first MVP will be Jet Williams.
That's right.
And then Odd Villain saying future Marlin Jet Williams. Which is a hilarious way to put that. Oh my God. Future Marlin Jet Williams. Okay. Ibby, we can continue the Soto conversation, but I think we should hold that off for just a bit here, because there is a guy who we touched on at the end of the first half that a couple of people have brought up, and I want to put a wrap on this, and the super chats kind of changed the tenor of the conversation. So I want to jump back to the pitching side, and then we can finish up on the Juan Soto stuff. And that man is Max Kranick, as Subway to Shea says, or as Charlie says, Max Kranick has pitched really well and should definitely be in the mix for the bullpen. I know there's about 2 weeks left before opening day. I think it's 15 days from today. If you're listening to this or watching it later, 2 weeks tomorrow. But I think, this is just me, no inside information, I think Max Kranick, barring a catastrophic meltdown over the next 2 weeks, is not just in the mix. Max Kranick will be in the Mets opening day bullpen. His stuff is too good. His stuff is played up too well. He's had too good of a spring. They need to put him in the bullpen. And I think part of the decision that we talked about last week with Sean Reed-Foley is already setting themselves up to do that. They're making room for Max Kranick.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I have to laugh at this real quick just to bring it up before we dive into the conversation. How Stan's saying how
you froze, but I'll jump in. Jet Williams would be the shortest MVP since 1898.
Comes to Max Kranick. This spring, he's got 8 innings pitched, 5 hits, no walks, 10 strikeouts. The stuff is there, man. The presence is there. Everything that I've mentioned before, it's everything that I want to see out of someone in the bullpen, whether he's throwing an inning or 2 innings, whatever it may be. Doesn't matter. He belongs in this bullpen. He's going to be in this bullpen. As John just said, like we hit on last week, the news that we saw come down with Sean Reed-Foley, the fact that he's still, he's going back to Syracuse. He says he doesn't want to leave the organization. So Reed-Foley's back in Syracuse. It's all well and good. But I think that move, because we had pegged Sean Reed-Foley to be someone in this bullpen.
He's out of options, and he's always pitched well when he's healthy.
When he's healthy, that's the whole thing. So when you have someone like Kranick perform the way that he does, or that he is, that spoke more. It was like screaming at everybody. This guy's going to be here. This guy deserves to be here. And I think all in all, because of what he was trying to get done last year, but injuries kind of set things back. They wanted to get a look at him last year. They didn't get an opportunity to because of said injuries. I do think that Max Kranick is making this team. He's going to be a staple in this bullpen, and he's going to be a guy that you can go to even in high leverage situations.
Ibby, we're going to take a quick pause from this conversation.
Okay.
This is very important. Game for War says, I'm willing to bet that Ibby's internet wires are attached to an old splitter that slowed my internets down for years. You got an old splitter? You got some old Ethernet cables out there? What do you got?
You know what? I don't know. I mean,
if you don't know, then you do.
I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I just let the guys from Xfinity handle all that stuff. I don't know.
How long? I don't want you to give your address out on this stream.
I'm not John's trying to dox me on our own show.
I'm not trying to dox.
Save that for Carson. Carson's the one that gets doxed, not me.
Listen, Carson gets doxed on the regular. Look, no, I just want to know, how long have you lived in the place where you live?
I'm going on. I'm losing count now. I moved.
If you've lost count and you don't know if you have an old splitter, oh my God, that's got to be it. You got to swap out all those things. Ronald says, get the Geek Squad over there. You know what I mean? Get somebody over there.
Keep sending the super chats, and I'll get the Geek Squad over here, and I'll be able to get things accomplished.
I like how D put this, because every once in a while, Odd Villain does it a lot, and obviously a lot of our fans are either in New York or from New York. But I live in Burbank now, so I don't get this everywhere I go. Sometimes somebody says something that is so New York sounding that I just have to pull it up. And this one from D, inspect that shit, bro. That is. That shit is like that. It's like on the Chappelle show when he's like, "You better wrap that gavel up, B." Like that is one of the most New York ways to put that. Is freaking hilarious. Carson saying Xfinity. Well, we found the problem.
They're usually pretty solid.
I'm sorry. I had to derail that entire Max Kranick conversation just because of your Wi-Fi. But look, Kranick, I think the Mets are in this really interesting spot with Kranick. They have not only him, but then you look at if Daniel Nunez is healthy and in the bullpen, and Jose Butto. Now, I know Butto has not taken to the bullpen role in the way that you would hope with regards to being able to bounce back quickly. Even if he only throws an inning, sometimes he can't pitch for 2 days because his ramp up is too much or whatever the case is. But anyway, you have Kranick, you have Butto, you have Daniel Nunez, who can all throw multiple innings. And usually your guys who throw multiple innings out of the pen are your long relief guys. We spent so much time in the first half talking about Griffin Canning and his role on this team being like a kind of mop-up guy. The Trevor Williams, the old school long relief guy. Man, my starter got bombed. He's out in the second inning. Let's bring in Griffin Canning here. He'll eat up, 3 or 4 innings. We'll go to the bullpen. We won't burn them out, but then we do lose Canning for a couple days. Well, now all of a sudden, you have this situation where Buto, Kranick, Daniel Nunez, they could be high leverage, multiple inning guys. And I think that is something that this team can deploy very creatively. And then, of course, there's a couple people here talking about another guy who was a starter, can pitch out of the bullpen, which is what about Jose Urán from Carson? And Odd Villain said Jose UTI was taking back shots yesterday. And Michael Segrove saying Urán got the piss beat out of him. So we're really running that. Of course, talking about Jose Urania.
God.
Shout out to you guys for being the most creative chat, I think, in Mets friggin' podcast history. You guys are the best on this stuff. But Ibby, I don't know where you cut out for a moment there, but I just think the ability to have 2 to 3 guys in Kranick, Buto, and Nunez who can all pitch multiple innings in high leverage is something we have not really seen in a very long time, if ever, in a major league bullpen. Deployed in the modern bullpen. I know bullpens were different in the 70s, so I don't want people in the chat to jump down my throat about guys being able to, throw a bunch of innings then. But just having these like 3 guys who can pitch later in the game in high leverage that can give you multiple innings, that's epic if the Mets have that.
You were cutting in and out, but I think I got the majority of it. So I agree that me as a fan, I'm not used to seeing options within the pen, like having 3 or 4 guys where you can say, like, this is, we can go to this guy in this situation. We have a lefty that can get out righties now. It's just like all these different things that, are starting to be seen and developed, keyword developed, from this team. It's awesome to see. And this is why we always implore Mets fans to be patient. And we talk about patience over panic on this show. We have, and now I can use it even more because I can say, nobody panic. Here comes Kranick, or however we want to go about it. But having guys like this,
I like Jose UTI better.
Well, hopefully we're not seeing Jose UTI all that often this year, because that's the last thing that we want is a UTI during the season. But all in all, there are options within this pen. We know David Stearns can build a bullpen. He's done it his entire career in Milwaukee. Now we're starting to see some of those returns, in the early going now, after being here for a year. What works, what doesn't, his quick trigger when it comes to cutting loose guys and knowing when it's working and not working. So, like you said, you mentioned those names from the right side. It's great. AJ Minter coming back today, looking sharp. He was throwing in the low 90s, but still working his way back up. Cutter seemed to be there as well. So, looks like he could be tracking for the opening day roster, which is great. And, just to borrow what Carson said before, I'll reiterate it, saying how, having a lefty that can get out both lefties and righties goes a long way for this bullpen. So, just having a legit lefty in this bullpen goes a long way. We're still working on getting a second lefty within the bullpen that you can just be like, 2 lefties. But either way, all things are looking good, in my opinion, when it comes to this bullpen. And to bring it back to where we started, Max Kranick looking fantastic, and I'm expecting a lot from him in this upcoming season.
Yeah, Charlie's saying Kranick still has an option, which is a big problem. Hope it doesn't come down to that as the issue. I don't think it will. I really don't. I don't see it going that route. He's been too good. And again, they've already begun to clear the deck a little bit to open up an avenue for him to make the team. Ronald saying, Huascar Brazaban can also pitch multiple innings, but he's a guy who was not great after he was acquired. He's a guy who has options. So
Yes.
he is, to me, the guy who's going to be on the outside looking in. A guy who was out of options, though, Ibby, potentially in the role of that second lefty. Danny Young, I believe, does not have any options left. So they will have to make a decision with him at the end of spring training.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Like, what ends up happening with the pen, what ends up happening with, the bench and how they're going to do things. And, Starling Marte, we talked about last week when it comes to, what's going to happen in the outfield and DH. Is he going to be able to provide anything? Is anyone going to start on the IL? All these things. It's going to be a very interesting 2 weeks to watch how the cut downs for our New York Mets end up going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a good one from Odd Villain saying, I was hoping that Genesis Cabrera would hoop, but he's looked like Joey Backshots last time, which is Jose Urena, I think, is what they've decided to start to call him, as Joey Backshots. So anyway, yeah, look, this is a guy who has a lot of major league experience in Cabrera.
Yeah.
It was a good thought process to bring him in on a minor league deal, spring training invite, all that stuff. I just don't think he's going to do well enough to crack through, especially with Danny Young being out of options, because like Ronald says, Danny Young's going to get snatched up on waivers. He might not be great, but he's a lefty who showed some promise. And if they are going to carry two lefties, they are not going to expose Young to waivers in favor of Cabrera when Young has arguably been better than Cabrera in spring training anyway. So it's just going to come down to a numbers game, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to really add on that one. I think you hit on it pretty spot on, to be honest. Yeah.
Let's address this question then. Ronald has brought this up twice. Kranick, Edwin's successor for the closer role? ?
I'm not going to jump that far.
Yeah,
I'm not going to jump that far. Yeah,
that's what I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah, I'm not going to jump that far.
I can't have that. I like the sometimes baseball fans. We think too far in advance.
Yes.
We all do. I do.
Yes.
You do. And I try to tell people on the show, you and I try to tell people on the show, don't look too far in advance. Look at what's right in front of you. But baseball careers are longer than a lot of the other sports, right? It takes a long time for guys to get here, whether they're prospects. You hear about a guy being signed internationally. He's 16. You hear about a guy getting drafted out of high school. He's 18. Even a guy who gets drafted out of college, early 20s. It takes a little bit of time to get here. So you're always looking down the road at something. Yeah, maybe, but you can't have that conversation on March 12th. Edwin Diaz is here. Edwin Diaz is still one of the best closers in the sport. He's the highest paid closer in the sport. He's going to be here for another several years at least. So I can't have that conversation now. I do like the optimism and being, bullish on what Kranick could be, but Edwin Diaz is entrenched, Ibby. He is here. He is here. And that's it. Ibby is frozen.
Oh, no, I wasn't. I thought you were.
Okay.
Oh, my bad. No. Yeah, he is entrenched. And I think maybe Ronald's only saying that because of the whole potential of because after this year, Diaz could opt out, I believe. I think that's part of the conversation with something like that. And if I'm wrong, Ronald, please correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not where you were going with that. But yeah,
I don't think Diaz is going to opt out of that contract.
I don't think he should either. I don't think he should. But if he goes out there and pitches all worldly and then says, I'm going to get another, instead of having 2 years, I want to get another 4-year deal. Maybe he does something like that. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of weird things happen when it comes to contracts. So I'm not looking that far in advance. He's the closer right now. Kranick, I'm just hoping, can be a consistent, 1 to 2 inning guy that you can call on, that you know exactly what you're going to be getting.
Yeah, Edwin Diaz does have the opt-out. If he does not opt out, man, it's basically, another $30 million No, excuse me. 28 million if he opts in, and then there's a player option, or excuse me, a club option for 17 million. So I just don't see him opting out. I really don't. It just seems like I don't know he's going to get more than what he has right now. Maybe he has one of those absolute lights out Edwin Diaz years, the likes of which he's already had two of. But I don't think, I mean, his AAV breaks down maybe to like 18 million a year, 20 million a year. He's not getting more. That's the zero cools question. Who's paying Diaz over 20 million a year if he opts out? His AAV is $20 million a year.
No, I agree. But I was also perplexed when Garrett Cole initially opted out. I was like, why would you do that? You're not going to get anything close to this again. And then obviously you went back to the Yanks, on the deal that it was. But initially he opted out too. I was like, why would you do this? This doesn't make any sense. Sometimes wild things happen. I don't think he will, but you never know with players sometimes.
Yeah, I could also see, let's say he has an incredible year. He has that Diaz year. Again, he had one with us, one with Seattle. Just incredible, great, terrific, put it up against, all-time closer years ever. He has a year like that. Maybe he does want to opt out, but I think the Mets find a way to keep him in that situation. I think it becomes more about like security and him wanting to be here, but maximize, so maybe he opts out and the Mets just take that option, right? That club option, and they make it a guaranteed year. So instead of having 2 years left, he gets 3 years. Like you could do something like that. I don't see it happening. I really don't. I don't think he's gonna opt out. I can't see it. I can't get behind it.
I don't see it either, but to Ronald's point, I think he said I was correct in saying that it was more so from the whole Kranick and opt out because of that. I don't think it's going to happen. And I think, the focus here should just be on Kranick being successful this upcoming season as a staple of our bullpen moving forward.
We got about 20 minutes to play with before we get out of here. Hour and 41 minutes in. If you are watching live, remember to like the video. If you're sitting in the background and you want to get involved in the live chat, subscribe to the channel. It's the only way to become a member of the live chat. And if you want to make sure that your chat, your question, your comment, your concern, whatever is heard and read and addressed on the show, you know what to do. Hit that super chat button to guarantee that we get to it even here in the last 18 minutes or so. Ibby, let's turn our attention back to the offense. I said we were going to segue for the bullpen, talk Max Kranick. We did that. Let's get back onto Juan Soto. Juan Soto has been, Juan Soto. He has been so damn terrific with regards to what you thought he would offer, what you expected him to offer, what Met fans could dream that he would offer. I know it's spring training, but he has been that. He has been everything that Met fans could hope for thus far. And it is wonderful to see. You and I were talking before the show started about the Will Salmon article. Will Salmon, former guest on the show, covers the Mets terrifically for The Athletic, talking a little bit about Juan Soto fitting in and becoming this kind of entrenched presence already in the clubhouse. And look, when you sign a 15-year deal, it doesn't really take you long to kind of get your feet wet in the clubhouse. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're not worried about it because you're here longer than everybody else. So it's just really, really nice to see. Again, I know the games don't matter yet. The stats don't matter yet, but you want to see great players being great players. And that's what Juan Soto has been doing.
And the article by Will Salmon was fantastic, and it was talking about how Soto obviously the last couple of years has bounced around a lot, and now knowing that you can fully get comfortable where you are, you can become a presence truly where you are because you're going to be here. This is your home. Like you worked as hard as you have throughout your entire career to finally get to a point where this is my home. I'm going to be a part of this. And yeah, the article was great. And if you haven't read it, if you want it, I'll send it to you because I do have The Athletic. So I will send it to anyone who wants to read it because it was so well done. Will's the best. And just speaking on the competitive nature of Juan Soto, about how he's a silent leader. He's not a rah-rah guy. He works extremely hard, and by others seeing how he works, it permeates to everybody else. And it could be the smallest of things, like why not have a little bit more fun during that clip that dropped on Twitter a couple of weeks ago now, where they had the batting practice swing off between him and Nimmo against Lindor, and I can't remember who Lindor was with, but just having that back and forth of trying to have a little bit more fun and trying to focus guys on saying, we're not hitting home runs right now. We all know we can hit home runs. I want you to hit a line drive, and I want you to hit it to left field. I want you to line drive to right field. Like the smallest of things to help a player get better in certain spots. And that helped the others realize this guy's on another level of thinking when it comes to stuff like this. He's not going to scream at people. He's not going to be, to use Mets fans' love of a player of yesteryear. Like, he's not going to be in people's faces like Wally Backman was back in the day and fighting people and kicking dirt and all that stuff. No, he's going to go out there. He's going to perform. He's going to do what needs to be done. So having a player of this ilk, and I said this the entire offseason on why I wanted him as a ball player, not just for the stats, but because a player like that helps the players that are here get better. Because when you see someone of that stature, to be able to go out there every single day and the work that they put in, and how we all sit here and we can say that he's a modern day Ted Williams. We can all say that and not, bat an eye, because it's the truth when you look at the stats. Having that next to a Mark Vientos, having that even next to a Francisco Lindor takes him to the next level. Having that for a Pete Alonso creates opportunities for him to then do what we've been saying, to be yourself, be the power hitter, drive me in. I'm going to get out in front of you, drive me in. Do what you got to do, okay? Put the ball over the fence, hit the gap, whatever it is, okay? Having a guy like this makes things so much easier for everyone else. And that's why an investment like this, while people scream and banter about how it's overrated, overpaid, whatever it is, no. This is a long-term commitment that makes all the sense in the world, because when you get a player of this stature, it's not just for him being great. It's the fact that he makes everyone else around him great.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that, save for the fact that you look at some guys just have an approach to hitting that makes sense to other people as well. And you saw that last year, despite the fact that he did not have a great season by really any stretch. He had a very good run of a few weeks, and that is JD Martinez. JD Martinez understands hitting fundamentally. And it seems as though, I've never talked to him about it, but it seems as though he is able to articulate it to other people, other players, in a way that helps them understand it. He can kind of carry on that wisdom. It's coach-like, right? Obviously. But you saw it pay dividends for guys like Vientos being around him. Soto is like that on steroids. Soto has such a good approach. Soto is so disciplined. And you're getting what JD didn't offer, which is the on-the-field help, the actual ability to provide relief in the lineup. And I think you're going to see Soto's fingerprints as time goes on all over the lineup, right? Like, you look at a guy like Brandon Nimmo, always been a good on-base guy, sacrifice some on base for a bit more power. Well, what if Soto's influence can help Brandon Nimmo find a happy medium? What if Soto's influence can help Brandon Nimmo maximize his power by being more selective, not less? What if he can do something, Soto, that is to a lesser degree for a player with a similar skill set like Jesse Winker? And I'm using both of those guys as examples because they're both also left-handed hitters. But then you look at guys who hunt fastballs and mash fastballs. Vientos, Alvarez, even Pete Alonso. There is value in the selectivity. And it's not about taking your walks necessarily. It's not about getting your on-base percentage up. That is a different skill set that maybe only Soto possesses on this roster from that standpoint. But knowing which pitches to offer at and when and how to attack them and how to put yourself in a position where you can get that pitch that you can handle. Pete Alonso gets a fastball in the zone instead of a slider down and away. Pete Alonso is a different player.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see some of that with just this is Soto we're talking about, just Soto's influence on the team every day, being in the clubhouse. I've been in major league clubhouses. They talk about this stuff. They don't just show up like we all show up to our softball games and stretch a little bit or not in the case of some people and go out and just try to hit the ball. Like, this is their job. And I know that sounds like a very obvious thing to say or maybe an oversimplification, but like, I've seen a group of major leaguers, some of whom are in the game DHing, some of whom are probably going to get called on because they know their role late in the game, some of whom are hurt, some of whom are actively in the game, sitting around at the hitting, like the tunnel, the batting cage, talking and looking at the game on the screen and talking about what the pitchers are doing and working on stuff. That stuff is it's going to play a factor. I mean, it has to.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think that when you have someone of this ilk, it's just there's only so much more I can really say because I can only wax poetic, so often during a show. As Dee pointed out, I was going off before, but yeah, just ultimately having a guy like this makes things that much better for everyone else. It becomes appointment television when he's in the box because of all things that can happen. And speaking of appointment television, we cannot end this show without saying how hysterical the video was that was put out there by someone on Twitter that everyone ran with when it came to somebody screaming at Juan Soto as he was taking the outfield. And they were screaming at him saying that he was overrated, you're overpaid, you're a nobody, you're a bum. And Soto, in turn, looks at the guy, doesn't say a word, just eyeballs him, nothing. Turns back around, goes up there the next inning, hits a home run, and what's he do? He hits it right at the fucking guy. Hits it right at the guy, and this moron tries to catch the ball, falls on his ass, looks like an idiot. So please. Now, obviously, we know that that's not done, on purpose. I know Juan Soto is a great hitter, but he can't place the ball like that. But
you know what? I'm going to disagree. I say he did the whole thing on purpose.
So
it's spring training. Way, what does it matter?
Either way, yes, it becomes a story of lore, of spring training lore of PSL forever. But if you're going to do something like that, my guy, please stick to the bit. If you hate the guy that much, you want to trying to catch the ball and try to fall over everybody as you're trying to catch it, please stick to the bit, hate the guy, and say, I don't want that ball. Okay, forget that ball. This guy stinks. Stay true to what you were just saying less than 5 minutes ago. Shout out to you, Juan Soto, for keeping your cool and then putting the ball right in the guy's face.
Some people are keyboard warriors in real life. Frank the Tank is one. I know we don't like to evoke his name on the show. This has nothing to do with him. Yeah. But we've seen him do that. We've seen him drag Mets management and then put his hat in his hand and ask Francisco Lindor for an autograph. And we've seen him not have the guts to say to Carlos Mendoza's face what he says online. We've seen him put on the jersey of another team and go, and nobody dragged Paul Sewald harder than Frank the Tank, and then they shakes hand. Like, some people are just like that because they're pathetic. If you're going to be about something, be about it.
Yeah.
And there's something to be said about just standing on the principles that you have and you claim to have. And so most people in the world that we live in today, I think there's a lot of, maybe not most people, but there's a lot of people that don't know how to do that because a lot of people don't have the integrity of, like I've said a lot of things on this show about Brett Beatty or Jeff McNeil. They're still on my team. I want them to succeed. But like, if Jeff McNeil was walking down the street tomorrow when I went outside, I'm not going to run over to him and be like, oh my God, it's Jeff McNeil. Oh my God, this is so cool. It's not. I don't I think he's a shitty ball player. It is what it is. But like, I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't want him to do well. And I just think that people are, again, they just don't have the integrity to stand on business. They want to talk a lot. And then they're like, oh, but I want this ball. And they'll try to sell this ball or whatever. Like, it's sad. It's very sad.
Sounds like very similar to what I was saying before that I wanted to put into the safe, which was two bozos trying to bait our captain shortstop into nonsense. While they say things when people are afar, but then they have people on their show, then they get spoken down to, and then they have no idea how to really combat and go back because
those two guys are pathetic.
Somebody actually called us out on something or just basically spit on what I was trying to invoke them to do, which was, either bury a teammate or speak on something that doesn't need to be spoken on, because in the end, it doesn't matter because this is a baseball player talking about his team. He doesn't care about what's going on across town. It's none of his business. It'll matter, like he said, it'll matter when we face them. But until then, I'm focused on what I'm focused on, which is what any professional would say. So basically, I love hearing those clips that Keith sent us in the chat because that's the stuff that I like to see from my captain, who I love and respect with in everything when it comes to Lindor, because he went on that station and said what needed to be said, and he did it in a manner that was professional, but also in a very FU way, which is awesome.
I don't know what conversation is happening in the comments. I could scroll up and look, but I just want to bring up this comment by itself. I can't wait for the Natural remake with Bad Bunny. I don't know what this is in reference to, but by itself, it's better. So I don't want anybody to explain it to me. Just please leave it alone. That is the greatest comment of all time. I don't know what that was the answer to, or the joke to, or the punchline for. I don't know. I don't care. It was terrific. Ibby, got about 4 minutes. I don't want to talk about this for a long time.
Yeah.
I just want to bring up, we could talk about this next week and we'll talk about it next year and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. talking about how he wants $500 million. Mm-hmm. You've been adamant that he's not going to get that on the open market. You think he's going to get less because he's a first baseman and he's a bad body first baseman, despite the fact that he will be hitting free agency young, which is usually the golden ticket. 26, 27-year-old free agents, they get a long contract, so they do get more money over the course of the contract than somebody who is older than them, regardless of their defensive ability or their position or their body type or whatever. They will get more money, full stop. Mm-hmm. But do you think that he made the right move in turning down what seems to be, what did they say? They offered him like $400 million or something like that.
Closer to 450. He wants 5.
Yeah. Do you think he made the right move turning down 450? Do you think he can get $500 million?
Put it this way. And Ken Rosenthal put it best today on Foul Territory. He said that if we're talking about $50 million and removing some deferrals, we're not that far off from him getting exactly what he wants from the Blue Jays. So
fair. Yeah, I saw that.
He could still get what he wants, get out of, hit the market, get a bunch of free dinners, get chatted up by a bunch of people, try to drive price, because ultimately the Jays should do everything in their power to just keep the guy, to show that someone's willing to take our money. And we have someone here that is young, a star in the game, and someone we can actually build around. Now, if they can continue to do so will be the question, because of the fact that they're a little bit of an older team and they don't have much in the farm system. So I do believe that him doing this, while a gamble, I think it's a gamble that can pay off for him, because I think ultimately the Jays would show him said money because they're so frustrated by the fact that they're not able to get somebody. My issue, and I will stay consistent with this because I have to. My issue is the position. My issue is, yes, the weight to an extent. My issue is the fact that he's had 2 good years and 2 bad years. And one of those good years was done in a minor league stadium when they were having issues in Toronto. So I'm not taking anything away from him as a ball player. I can't, because he's fantastic when everything clicks. But I have a hard time anyone outside of Toronto offering him that much money. I'm curious as to who it would be. I really am, because I've watched for a say no thank you to first baseman. Some very good.
I'm sure you're making some good points, but you are frozen as hell.
I'm sorry, but I'm losing my place now because
it's all good. I'm going to jump into the comments here.
I just think, yeah.
This is a good one from Carson. We won't know if Vlad made the right move until 162 games are played. That's how the market works. Show up in the walk year, and you can run with it for years to come. I think that's a good point.
I think we
saw that with Pete. I think we've seen that with free agents before. Walk years do matter. And walk years for bad-bodied, non-premium position players, even if they're 26 or 27 years old, will matter, because he has had some ups and downs in his career. I think that much is clear. Last question I will ask you, Ibby. D saying, pedal faster so that your Wi-Fi works. Last question I will ask you, very point blankly. Does the announcement of his demands for $500 million and 14 years, you and I have been proponents of Vladdy playing for the Mets. Does that sour you? Whether or not he gets it, just the concept that that's where this might go, does it sour you wanting him to be on this team?
Because he wants 500 million? Does it sour me? Is that the sorry, just making sure.
Yes.
Okay. It's a very high number, and I know we speak on how numbers don't matter anymore with this type of ownership, but
let me ask you this.
I will say, go ahead.
Let me ask you this instead.
Yeah.
If he gets $500 million, would you give him that deal? If that's the deal he gets, would you do it?
It's tough to
I know it's hard. It's a hard question.
Are you I'll answer it like this. I'll say this. If you're telling me that's my only option to get better and Pete leaves, and this is the way that they're going to choose to go about building an offense and being consistent and growing with Juan Soto, then I guess I wouldn't have an issue. But to answer it the way I wanted to answer it, if you told me I had $500 million to spend, would I spend it on Vlad Jr. based off of the players that are going to be available next year? I would say no, because I would sign Kyle Tucker instead.
Fair enough. Okay. A lot of people, we'll talk more about this next week, and we'll talk about it in the offseason and all that stuff. Just wanted to bring it up because it is topical, and it does have to do with the Mets. Not right now, not this week, not this year, not this month, but it does have to do with the Mets, because the Mets are going to need a first baseman. And there is a concept of signing a guy to a 14-year deal and pairing him with Juan Soto for the next 14 years. That does make sense. But I see a lot of you saying the years are the problem. And, and I get that. And I'm not going to advocate for it or against it. Odd Villain says AAV 30 to 35 tops. And the reason why I pull that up is because 500 million divided by 14 years is $35.7 million a year. So
I also think, real quick, I also think that it's going to be difficult for any team to go 15 years on two players. I do.
I agree with that too.
I think that's
I agree. So look, again, not a conversation for now, just one that was worth bringing up because that did drop. So we are at the 2-hour mark, just over. Bring up this comment from Douglas Barnes. It has been a while since I've been this excited for opening day. You should be excited. Like we say every week, we're getting closer and closer and closer to opening day, closer and closer to real baseball. There is a lot to look forward to. And if you're not excited and you're a Mets fan right now, that's weird, man. It's weird as hell. Ibby, anything we didn't get to you want to say before we get out of here?
I got nothing else, John. I'm very pumped up to echo the comments that were said about the season that is ahead. We got some fun shows coming up. We got the bold prediction show right around the corner. Real baseball.
2 weeks, right?
Near.
Not next week. We'll do it the week after.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right before the start, and we got some balloons going off right there for John, which is great.
You know how we do.
And no, I'm very pumped up. And yeah, man, I agree. Like just being able to have this type of lineup and this type of energy around this team. I will be there opening day weekend for the Mets home opener. Not Friday, not Saturday. I'll be there Sunday. So the 6th. So if anyone is out there, I'll keep reminding people. Would like to meet up and chat and talk some ball, and hopefully the hamsters can get done, doing their deal right now in terms of keeping my Wi-Fi alive so we can end this show. So I'll throw it to my partner and he'll take you guys out because I can't do that because odds are the entire feed would cut.
That is true. That is accurate. Shout out to everybody who was here for the show. There's about 300 people with us right now. Thank you to everybody who says, grateful for the chat. Great show. We appreciate you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Can't do it without you. Really appreciate everybody. In the comments, appreciate the super chats too along the way. Hebrew Hammer, Darren Rivera, and those folks that
thank you so much.
Yes, in that regard. Game for War, Ibby, look for an old splitter. Cable guys don't care if they keep using a 20-year-old splitter.
That's my job.
Go ahead and check it out. Hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe to the channel. It helps the algorithm. All that stuff helps us get out to more folks, helps the show continue to grow. If you missed any of it, you can check out the show in its entirety on our YouTube channel, which is called Til Mets Do Us Part. As soon as we end the broadcast, coming up here in a couple of seconds. If you can't watch, don't worry. We've got you covered. This will drop as an audio podcast on Apple and Spotify and all of those other places that you know and love starting tomorrow morning. It's Til Mets Do Us Part. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez. We will see you next week. LFGM.